So this is one more different area we're looking at. Of course, statistical natural language processing is application of statistical models to text processing. Okay. The funny thing, of course, is we started with the natural language model. Remember, we started with a reasonable model, which is basically completely sensitive to the word order, which is a big deal in English, and positions and words and so on. And then we decided that that requires too many probabilities to be assessed, and there will never be enough data to assess them meaningfully. So we made a humongous leap to the other shallow end, where we said all words are completely independently picked from the same vocabulary with replacement in essence. And that's the unigram model. And it turns out that unigram model is quite a useful way of, it's as bad as it is. In fact, unigram model also corresponds to the bag of words model. And you would not think that unigram, English text generated by unigram model is worth reading, and yet it's actually able to, those models are able to get for you, retrieve for you the documents you might be looking for in search engines. Okay, so we tend to think that, bad English, in the sense that we tend to think that obviously without a word order, without phrasal structure, there is no language. And yet, the fact that search engines work shows unigram model captures a lot of the language. It doesn't capture the zero of the language, but it captures much more than zero, level of knowledge. So the one thing that, we are again looking at the generative models. That means essentially, as I went with my belabored novel writing examples last class, essentially we are trying to generate novels. Okay, so we are generating complete documents using, and so that these models are generating in the sense they generate new documents. Okay, once you learn the probability distribution, and all you need to learn here is what? The probability distribution PWI. That's it. Because the word, the ith word occurs in PW basically. Okay. So a word occurs in any document with the same probability, and any number of times with the same probability. Okay. So now this PW is a discrete distribution on the vocabulary. Right? So you essentially have a vocabulary, the first word, second word, third word, etc., up to V words. Okay? And all you are looking for essentially is some number, some vector of probabilities, 0.001, 0.002, blah, 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 and the only thing I care is sum is equal to 1. That's a probability distribution. Okay, so now since I said it's generative model, one of the interesting points is you know how to use this. If I were to give you a probability distribution for PW, you know how to generate the documents. But you're always interested in inverting the generative model. Okay, so the idea of the generative, so generative models will get you new documents, but before you can use the generative model, somebody needs to give you the PW, the probability of the words. Okay, so to do that, you essentially have to learn that from examples. That's the inversion of the generative model. Okay, which is the learning aspect. Okay, so now how do I learn this word probabilities? Of course, I could do an MLE, the maximum likelihood estimation. So, for example, since all documents are created equal, so I take the first 50, like 500 documents, just count the total number of words in those 500 documents. Let's say that's total of 1 million, and the total number of times the word is occurs in it, let's say, is 5,000. So then the probability for is 5,000 by 1 million. Right? Now, the only worry if you do it this way and very strictly do it this way, then a probability for a word like perplexity or a word like graphical model would be 0, probably. Because in the 5,000 documents that you looked at, not even a single instance of that word occurred. Which that means that you will never ever generate a document with those words, with that word. Even though that word was part of the vocabulary, you would assume that its probability is 0. So you'll never generate a document that will have that word. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so the other option, of course, is instead of doing MLE, you can do Bayesian learning. In the case of Bayesian learning, you essentially put a prior over this distribution. Okay, so one distribution, the prior, since this is a multinomial distribution, it's a multinomial distribution of dimensionality V. V is the size of the vocabulary. So if there are 500,000 words, let's say if you are looking at, let's say, 10,000 words, then it's a 10,000 dimensional distribution. Okay, so you need to put a prior on it, and for all the reasons we went through when we talked about beta priors, we again want a conjugate prior. Okay, conjugate prior for multinomial, conjugate prior for Bernoulli distributions is beta, conjugate prior for multinomial distributions is Dirichlet. So actually, Dirichlet comes right here. Okay, one of the interesting things I hope you'll get is by the time you get to LDA, you should wonder what's the big difference between LDA and all the stuff that came before it. That's the sense of loss I want you to experience. Because nothing comes out of nowhere. Very rarely that in science something comes out of, completely out of here, out of blue. Okay? So you already can actually fit a Dirichlet distribution, as the prior, put a Dirichlet distribution with some hyperparameter. Okay? The further Dirichlet distribution now, the hyperparameter would be, alpha 1 to alpha v, which is v is the total size of the vocabulary. Okay, now the idea is you set some values for these alphas, okay, such that, remember that these alphas essentially, the intuitions for these are the same as the intuitions for the beta distribution, where the beta has alpha, A and B as hyperparameters. Okay, if there are large numbers, if alpha 1, etc., all the way up to alpha v, if you add them up, if you get a really large number, that means you'll have a very peaked distribution. Okay, if it's a very small number, you'll get essentially, very small number will get you a sparse distribution. That means very few of the probability distributions will be given high probability. Notice when I'm talking about this, the Dirichlet distribution is telling you which types of distributions over words are more likely and which are less likely a priori. Before you even saw the data, you're trying to kind of say, I expect the distribution I'll eventually learn to be essentially governed by my Dirichlet distribution. That's what you would do, okay? And then if you do that, essentially, as we found that because of the conjugacy and the way the conjugacy works with multinomial, it's almost like doing MLE with virtual counts. So the graphical model would be, even if there are 0 instances of graphical model or perplexity in the words you actually saw, you'd always say 0 plus some number divided by 5,000, whatever the 1 billion words plus some another number. That's the equivalent. So again, of course, Bayesian learning does that. You don't need to do a separate fudging. If you don't want to do full Bayesian learning, and if you're trying to do MLE estimate, but want to avoid zeros, then that's what you do. Okay, so just at unigram model itself, you pretty much got the idea of either MLE estimate or Dirichlet or Bayesian learning. That's what I want you to understand. Okay, so then we went to, then we started talking about how to improve this. This is, as from a language point of view, this is a very silly model because you're saying all words are created independently, and we talked about 2 different ways of extending it. One is n-gram models, where you'll assume up to size n, let's say a bigram model will say all 2-word probabilities, 2 words coming next to each other. Okay, and that would essentially at least capture some of the characteristics of the language. Do you see what I'm saying? And that would be developing. So what that means is then it would actually generate text that is sort of more like the text you might see. It will still not be text that you would like to read actually. Okay. So that's one way, and we didn't actually touch that side at all. The other side we did touch is to realize that not all documents will have the same exact distribution over words. If that were to be the case, then all books essentially have the same sort of information. But that's not true. There are computer science books, there is science fiction books and all that stuff, and so you would like to believe that the P of W, the word distribution, depends somehow on the document. Okay, you could do that. Now, of course, you can directly say that you can learn word distribution over just the documents, but then the problem, of course, is how do you get training data for the document? The document's training data is the document itself. Do you guys see this? Okay, so it's actually, if you just think from the point of view of the document, you can actually learn this of PW. You can learn PW given D. You can learn this. If I just give you one single document, it has 5,000 words, I can learn what is the word probability in that document. And if I give you one more document, you can compute the probability of words in that document separately. This is fine in as much as you just want to regenerate this document again. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you just want to regenerate this document, this is fine. But any generative model should be able to generate new documents, the ones that haven't been seen at all. Okay, and I may have mentioned during the semester that the connection, there is a strong connection, but still they're different. There's a strong connection between compression of data and the ability to predict future data. Learning and compression are connected, but not one and the same. Okay, in the case of compression, what matters more is losslessness. You want to be able to recreate this particular document with as little loss as possible. In the case of learning, it's all about future. It doesn't really matter how well you understood the homework problems. It matters how well you did on the test problems. Okay, I understand that not doing at all anything in the homework problems would ensure that you probably would do pretty badly on the test. But doing extremely well in the homework problems and overfitting your understanding just to the homework problems might not necessarily guarantee that you will get optimal performance in the test. Okay, so when you go from W, the unigram model, to the model where documents, the word distribution depends on the documents, the first idea is to directly go for W given D. Okay, we skip that. Basically because such a model will not have any predictive power. It would be a great model for reducing, compressing the document. But it won't have any power in generating other documents because it will only generate this document. To be able to generate other documents also, then I need to somehow say that documents are connected to other documents. So I would basically, when I said different books are different, I didn't say that book 1 would be different from book 2. I said science fiction books will be different from computer science books. So in some sense, I'm saying all books are somehow, brought back into a smaller dimensional space of topics of the books, genre of the books. And then I can learn the word distribution for the genres. Okay? And then, of course, if you were to generate a new document, and if you tell me that this new document is about science fiction, then I'll just generate, the science fiction. I'll just use the science fiction word distribution. At this point, it looks as if in fact every document has a single topic. This is basically what I'm suggesting. That have a scenario where every document has a single topic. And the number of topics is significantly less than the number of documents. Okay, and so you will wind up, so many, instead of just learning W with respect to a D, you will learn W with respect to a Z. Z being the topic. Okay, and then if I need to generate a new document, I just ask what document, what is the class of the document? And if you say the class of the document is equal to Z5, then I will just use the word distribution. Furthermore, I can actually look at the prior distribution of the topics. So for example, if you go to Amazon, right, and if you're just basically looking at all the books on Amazon, there are considerably fewer computer science books than there are, romance novels, for example. So if you're generating a new document, there should be higher probability for a new document that is a romance novel, and lower probability that you would generate a new document that is a computer science book. Do you see that? Because essentially topics are, there are more novels of a particular topic than, more books of a particular topic and less books of another topic. So that's like saying topics have a prior. So then the full generative model basically is like this. You pick a topic, and with respect to topic, you generate the words. The probability with which you pick the topic, basically, notice this is a Bayes network, right? So I need to give you what's the prior probability of generating a topic, of picking a topic. Okay, some topics are picked more often than others. And then once you pick the topic, you generate the words. And this is the single topic model. Okay, now here you can already see that the documents in some sense are essentially, both documents and words are somehow pushed into this middle space called the topic space. So you can think of documents as being, each document is mapped to a single topic. And each word, interestingly enough, is each word is also a point in this topic space, because essentially it will get a probability based on the topic that you pick. Okay, so that's the single topic model. Clearly, you can already see that single topic is too unrealistic. Okay, but before we get into that, let me again show, first of all, that with respect to this model, this is not a bad model. First of all, we talked first of all last time that if you are given the topic, if your training data gives you the topic, that's naive Bayes classification. And it's a hugely successful technique. Okay, so actually let me show you the slides that correspond to the naive Bayes classification. Oh, I removed it. Okay, fine. So naive Bayes classification, essentially you're giving data, you're giving a set of words as well as the topic for it. So each document with its topic is being given. And so from that, you can directly estimate the word to topic, word given topic distribution. And using Bayes rule, you can invert topic given word. You can compute topic given word. That's basically classification. Okay, and one of the very interesting questions is that Bayes classifiers work extremely well on text data. Some years back, basically, Peter Norvig, who is at that time the head of the research division of Google, was asked, so you seem to use a lot of machine learning at Google, so what sort of machine learning do you use? And he said, naive Bayes classifier. That's it. Okay, and it's like the simplest kind of classifier. And why does it work so well? So naive Bayes classifier can be used, for example, to learn between spam versus non-spam messages. I'm not saying it'll give you 99.9999% accuracy, but it gives you a higher accuracy than you would have suspected. You tend to think that somehow the words in the mail mean something. But it turns out, if all you care about is spam mails and non-spam mails, and if you already went through your mailbox, which is a bunch of, bags of words. Each mail is a bag of words. And then you manually said, this is spam, this is not spam, this is not spam, this is spam, this is spam. You gave me about 10,000 such messages. Then, essentially, I can learn the distribution of words with respect to spam messages. Presumably, the word Nigeria would have a much higher probability for the spam messages than, than something else. Right? Whereas non-spam messages will have a slightly different distribution over the words. And then just given PW given Z, where Z is only Z equal to 1 or Z equal to 2. Z equal to spam and Z equal to not spam. Only two topics for you. Given a new message, you can compute using naive Bayes, using this graphical model, you can compute what is the most likely Z given the words you have seen. Because by that time you would know the Bayes network. The Bayes network looks like Z given W1 to Wn. I know the values of W1 to Wn. I can compute P's posterior distribution on Z. Okay? And then pick, this is a posterior on Z, which is, there are only two topics, so it will get you two probabilities which sum to 1. Okay? And you basically pick the higher probability and say that's the topic. Now, is English really generated by independent words? Is spam mails generated by independently generated words? No. They just hope that once in a while you'll actually open the message and read something there. So they're not independently generating them. And word order matters and all those things are true. Okay? So because of which, in fact, the prior distribution of spam, the true posterior distribution of spam versus non-spam messages could be completely different from the one that you learned using this particular model. So, in particular, you may well find that if you knew exactly, if you did the right kind of modeling, using probably the very first kind of idea with positions for words, okay, then for your particular life, for a given new message, maybe the posterior for that new message is this is spam, this is not spam. You may have found it as 0.7, 0.3. Obviously, you're not having a good mailbox. 70% of your messages are spam. Right? And this model might say 0.501, 0.499. As posteriors go, are those posteriors close? Are those distributions close? Not at all. As classification goes, did they get the class correct? Yeah. This is actually one reason why naive Bayes classifiers work well. In fact, there is a paper, there's a guy called Pedro Domingos, whose original claim to fame was this little paper that he wrote saying, why does naive Bayes classifier work well? It shouldn't work well. We made all these crazy assumptions, and yet it seems to work well. And one way of thinking about it is this. One plausible explanation is that you can be right in picking the best class while still being completely far away in terms of the true posterior. Okay? So that's the reality regarding, so naive Bayes classifiers are way better as classification models than unigram models are as generative models. As we speak today, nobody is writing, I think as a mixture of unigram models as generative models. As we speak today, nobody is writing novels using mixed unigram models. Even if they are, nobody is buying them. And don't hold your breath, nobody is writing novels with LDA even. And even if they write with LDA, you will still not buy it. It's just a question of making the things that you generate be closer in the true posterior than what what you would have here, for example. Okay? So that's for the NBC. If you're doing, if you have data where consistently Z is missing, consistently the topic is missing, then you need to actually, you have a completely hidden node, and you need to do incomplete database learning. And if you're doing MLE, you would need to do EM. If on the other hand, one of the interesting things is for maximum likelihood learning, there is a distinction between complete data and incomplete data. Okay? There is a distinction between complete data and incomplete data. For Bayesian learning, is there such a difference? There isn't any. It's just computing posterior over the hidden values, that's all. Because Bayesian learning is not learning, it's just inference. Okay? There is no classic difference between, oh, here is the way you deal with complete data, here is the way you deal with incomplete data. You just put a prior on things and you basically just do posterior inference. Okay, so that gets me to, okay, so this is another way of looking at this. So category is the topic, it's not cat, but category, okay? And the category is causing the words. This is a single topic model. Okay, now suppose I'm trying to learn the full generative model. Suppose I did not actually guess, I only know the words and I never get to see the categories. Right? You can still do it by maximum likelihood estimation. It turns out that really becomes pretty bad. Okay, and there are technical ways of explaining it and say that essentially MLE is trying to find like a maximum of the likelihood function. And if the function is highly non-convex and has many small local minima and maxima, then any technique you use is likely to find you one of the local minima which may not be connected at all to the global minima. That's one way of thinking about it. Okay, so what you would do is instead of doing MLE, you would do Bayesian learning. To do Bayesian learning, all you need to do is you need to put, there is a prior on categories. Suppose there are K categories or K topics. Okay, there are K topics. That means topic 1 to K, and I need a distribution that gives K different probability values all up, adding up to 1. Now if I want to put a prior on it, I'll put a Dirichlet prior of dimensionality K. Because this is a multinomial distribution over a K-dimensional space, and so I put a Dirichlet prior over that K-dimensional space. And then what about words? Words basically will need, what do they need? They need P, W given Z. Now what is that? That is a conditional probability. Right? Okay, so given Z equal to Z1, what's the probability for word 1, word 2, etc., all the way to word V? Those numbers again have to add up to 1. Right? Now, again, rather than just directly learn them from the data, you would say there is a prior. Prior now is of what size? It's a V-dimensional prior. What would be the prior? Again, Dirichlet prior, because we are looking at multinomial distributions. Okay? Does this look very much like LDA? Is there any difference between this and LDA? Okay, so basically all I'm saying is that if you were to have a single topic model, then you're already getting, so for the previous one, for the unigram model, I already said you can do Bayesian learning, but you need one Dirichlet prior. By here you need two Dirichlet priors. One for the topic and one for the words. One would be K-dimensional, one would be V-dimensional. We would hope that K is much smaller than V. Right? Okay, so it's almost like LDA model. There's one little difference. The only difference is basically in LDA model, you assume that you don't actually have a single topic per document. You would have a mixture of topics within the document. And it's not obvious, it's upfront. What's basically saying is that within, let's say, if you take a book, then maybe the first 10 pages is of one topic, next 10 pages are another topic, next 10 pages, next 100 pages are another topic. All we are saying is it cannot be just one topic. Okay, now, it turns out that actually, the more reasonable way a particular book would have different topics is probably likely that the first K pages would have one topic, next, W pages will have the topic, and so on. It's actually easier for us to assume that every word can correspond to a different topic. So the first word is from topic 1, second word is for topic 15, third word is from topic 95, fourth word is again from topic 1, fifth word is again from topic 35, and so on. It's like, people who are trying to read this book will have a, basically what are the what do you get when you get hit by a car? What? Whiplash effect. So I'm just about figuring out what's happening. Wow, the topic changed. Okay, I figured out what is happening. Again, the topic changed. If you have a book with so many topics, not just different topics, but each word changes topic, you would still not buy the book. This time it's because you will be spending a lot of money on the chiropractors, because of the whiplash. And yet, LDA model, by now I'm assuming that in the back of this for the last several weeks you've been reading LDA paper. Okay, LDA model assumes every word is from a different topic. So it's somewhat better than this, but some people can say that's also a crazier version, where each word is its own topic. There are ways of slightly extending LDA models, yes.
So why don't we use a single word is a linear combination of different topics?
Single word is a linear combination of different.
For example, 40% of the word is come from topic 1 and 60% is come from topic 2.
Okay, wait. That's actually what we're going to talk about next. That's what LSI does, for example. That's one way of thinking about LSI. Okay. Okay. So, this, if you were to learn the single topic model, you would almost use everything that you are going to use for LDA. Okay. In particular, by the way, I mentioned it already, but do read, actually by next class, do read Parameter Estimation for Text Analysis. It's a beautiful paper. It also tries to remove the magic from one single method. Okay. Because it actually does the whole point of, you can do parameter estimation for unigram, you can do that for single topic, and then you can do it for LDA. And then by the time you do single topic, you would already have gotten to collapsed gift sampling, for example, because you would wind up needing to do that here too. Okay, and so when you get to LDA, it's just one little extra modeling improvement. Yes.
So you said that this is more difficult to believe that the first 10 pages are from one topic and or to calculate that first 10 pages are from one topic and next 10 pages are from another topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be easier because then we can believe that this is first book, this is second, this is first document, this is second document.
That's possible. I mean, it's up to you. Again, I don't know. I mean, I would think that if each word can come from a different topic, although of course nothing in the model stops contiguous words from just fortuitously coming from the same topic. There can be a run of the same topic, for example. And those of you who heard the LDA lecture by David Bly, you notice there is a part where he goes on and on about sparsity of the prior. An important issue is how do you, how many different topics is a document likely to contain? Okay, suppose you have 1 million documents and you decided to go with 500 topics. The normal assumption is every document contains all 500 topics with pretty reasonable probabilities. Okay, if you do that, if it is very much so, then I would say that then they are all from the same exact soup. Did you understand? That's sort of related to one of the questions somebody was asking. So if all documents are drawn from all 500 topics, I understand the distributions can be slightly different still. If all 500 topics have non-trivial probabilities for every topic, every document, that is essentially like, not me, right? Okay, that's like that's like having no topics. If you have topics at all, so look at the interesting trade-off. If you have topics at all, it's worth talking about topics only if each book contains just a few of them. Now the maximum you can go with few is one, but that we don't like. It's like we want Goldilocks effect. It's not too low in the number of topics. One would be just too low, not too high. 500 topics for each book. Okay, and one of the issues is if you're putting a prior, Dirichlet prior, how do you get sparsity? And the idea that you remember is, I don't know if you remember, if you have, for the beta prior, in 2 dimensions, if you have alpha plus beta is like 0.5, which is a small number, then your prior looks like this. Which means it gives non-trivial probabilities only here and here, and trivial probabilities in the middle. Low probabilities in the middle. And that's basically what they say. If you get your alpha vector such that they sum to a number that's small, then that's a way of ensuring that the model will fit itself with fewer topics per document. Remember, you decided the total number of topics already. But within the total number of topics, you still can decide whether every document has all topics or just has a few topics. And the way you fit for that is playing with it. But that's again about LDA. We're again skipping. But let me start, go back here. Yes, sir.
Sorry. And this question will maybe better take offline. But I guess using Bayes document to try, or using Bayes classification in a multi-level network, how do you do the updating process to change the distribution of things way out, or at the very top of the network?
No, you're talking about how to compute the posterior.
Right, so I see how to compute the posterior to think one level up, right? You apply your data, and then you can use the CID and the distribution.
No, but the posterior is for every node. So in this, do you think there is up and higher and lower for you? Would you say this is a lower one and this higher one, this is even higher and so on? Yeah, then basically that's posterior computation. In fact, by the way, in the LDA model, again, I'm playing this game because all of you have read LDA and I'm trying to reconstruct it in my own bad way. So what is the LDA posterior computation? What are they computing? They're essentially computing the topic proportions given the words. Okay, I'm sorry. They're computing the posteriors for the hidden variables, which is the topic proportions for one of them. Okay, and that is basically like theta in your case. And so that is about inference over networks. Okay, we haven't gotten into too many details other than saying, given any arbitrary Bayes network, you can do inference, for example, using Markov chain Monte Carlo and Gibbs sampling. And the reason to read this paper is because it will actually walk you through the update rules for the Gibbs sampling, collapse Gibbs sampling. And I hope you read it so that I don't have to go, line by line. Okay, so that's the answer. So it's basically inference. There is no separate magic. It's just one magic, which is inference. And if you understand inference, then you're fine.
And you just kind of do it. Okay.
Okay? Okay, so single topic is the deal. Now I'm going to go into LDA again, however, through 3 steps. This is probably the longest introduction to one single model, but I think you learned a whole bunch, on the way. If you didn't know graphical models, you learned graphical models, you talked about learning, you talked about Bayesian learning now, then you talked about text models, you talked about different kinds of text models, eventually culminating in LDA, which is 2003 state of the art. Okay, so it turns out that basically one issue would be that a document may not actually be just a single topic; it could be multiple topics. Okay, so in fact, for a while, forget about all the probabilities and stuff. Okay, and think of the following thing. After all, what you have bunch of terms. Terms are nothing but words. And you have documents. And you have a big matrix. Okay? You have a document, a term document matrix, TD matrix. Okay? Now, the assumption, this is basically what IR methods use. Information retrieval views documents as, so you can think of terms as vectors in the space of documents, or documents as vectors in the space of terms. So now we're talking about linear algebra for a minute. Okay? Now if you think in terms of this matrix, one interesting question is, well, so there are terms which, basically the term vector, a term can be thought of in terms of as a vector of documents, and the document itself can be thought of as a vector in terms, right? Now, what I might want to see is there a hidden force? Is there, let's say, a topic, okay, such that the topic decides both the terms and the documents? If that were to be the case, then somehow I want to split this matrix into term, actually let's do it this way. Just say, nothing changes really. I call it document, DT matrix. Document, term. It's just the transpose of the other matrix. Okay? So this can be thought of as document and topics are factors. Factor is another word for topics. Okay? So somehow each document is some mix over topics. So this document, for example, there are K topics, let's say, and there are M documents. You have, so here you have M documents and V terms. So this is a M by V matrix. Okay, I can now make it into M by K matrix. Okay, times, okay, topics, words. A K by V matrix. If I believe that there were K topics, then I can find those topics. If such topics were to exist, then I could reconstruct this matrix in terms of two smaller matrices. There's all sorts of interesting theory. If you're into it, take the IR course or look at some other matrix-based, linear algebra-based understanding of text modeling. Okay. So in this particular case, the advantage is this might have a very high rank, and you now have smaller matrices which have smaller ranks. And the rank, it turns out, is the largest submatrix of the matrix that has non-zero determinant. And a way of thinking about it is how many truly independent dimensions are there in this matrix. Because you can take a matrix and add a whole bunch of rows that are linear combinations of the existing rows, whole bunch of columns that are linear combinations of the existing columns. Matrix looks huge and big, but its rank is no bigger than the original matrix you started from. And the question, of course, is to the extent topics are truly the independent dimensions, somehow the reality is being hidden by essentially multiplying these two matrices and thinking there's a much higher size. Do you see what I'm saying? So if in fact there are two topics, this would be a M by 2 matrix, and this would be a 2 by V matrix. And computing, somehow dealing with those matrices is much simpler than dealing with an M by V matrix. Factorization is always good. Okay, this idea was originally used in something called latent semantic indexing, but essentially, this is basically matrix factorization. And there are like a ton of ideas for matrix factorization. One particular idea is SVD, singular value decomposition. And what it does actually is it actually gives you 3 matrices, not 2. You wanted 2, but it will give you 3. It will do this: document, factor, 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 factor word. Whenever I said factor, you can think of it as topic. Factor is the same as this. So now if you do this, then this and this, or this and this, would be one of these matrices. And SVD actually gives you these three matrices, and it has all sorts of interesting properties from a linear algebra point of view. But all we cared about is we always wanted two matrices. You give me three matrices, I'll define, I'll multiply a pair of them, and I'll get one of my matrices I always wanted. And I'm in business. And believe it or not, a lot of work in this matrix factorization at least, if you were to criticize matrix factorization approaches for anything, it is, you can do it, let's do it and see what happens. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not at all clear what exactly are the assumptions you are making in doing so. Okay, and pretty much every good method that is there in matrix factorization, people eventually get sick and tired of it, people at least in universities. People in industry are happy because it works, why do you care? And the universities say, why does it work? Let's make a theory of it. And it's very hard to make a theory over matrix factorization most of the time. Okay, for the application specific thing. However, you can make a theory in terms of probability distributions. You can make it into a statistical model, then you can all of a sudden start talking about generative models. So the backstory here is, people were doing this SVD-based decomposition. This has also been, it's a very well-known idea called principal components analysis. Some of you may already have heard about that way, or you can think of it as SVD. And all of them essentially, in effect, are actually capturing the hidden topics in the documents and words. If you were to do that, then what you said would work, because word now is a vector in the topic space. Documents are also vectors in the topic space. So documents and words are just points in the same space. Do you see what I'm saying? Words are fractional bags of topics. Documents are fractional bags of words, which are fractional bags of topics, so they're fractional bags of topics. And there's all sorts of beautiful things that happen because of this, because once you see this hidden structure, you will notice, so this is the picture that I drew on the board, but you can look at it. We spend like a class or two in IR normally talking about this, and you get it in like 15 minutes. Okay. So, you have the DT matrix can be split into this, and then you can do all sorts of interesting things such as dimensionality reduction. But the bigger thing for us is you somehow essentially think in terms of hidden factors now. And once you have the hidden factors, and it turns out this particular example is a bunch of documents and the words that occur in them. Okay? And the first 5, unbeknownst to you, are database documents. And the next 5 are statistics documents. It turns out. The question is, it's not obvious at all just by looking at it that some of them are databasey ones, some of them are statistics ones. Whereas if you were to do this process, and especially one of the other things that you can do is once you get these factors, you essentially have the hidden dimensions, and you can consider only the dimensions that have the highest variance and ignore the rest. Then you would reconstruct the matrix with loss, but it is a very good approximation, a low rank approximation of the original matrix, which lives in a lower dimensional space. So here, even though I have a 6-dimensional matrix here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you would notice that this number are much bigger than the other numbers. Suppose I would just go ahead and zero those out. I can still multiply this matrix by this matrix to this matrix. I'll get an approximation to that matrix. That would be a matrix of dimensionality 2, because it basically is going to have 2 rank. Okay, now if you were to reconstruct that matrix that way, now it turns out that we don't quite know what these 2 dimensions are, F1 and F2. I have no idea what those dimensions are. But suppose I were to draw x-axis as F1 and y-axis as F2. Okay, then these matrices essentially will tell me, this one is telling me the new document coordinates in the factor space. And similarly, I can compute the new term coordinates in the factor space. And if I do that, now the numbers are the terms, and the D1, D2, etc. are the documents. Everybody lives in the same space now. And furthermore, things that may not have been obviously connected up front. For example, it turns out D1 and D2 are such that one has only databases. Let me see, okay. So D1 is a new document, contains the word database 50 times. And D2 is a new document that contains SQL 50 times. You and I would think database, SQL, what's the difference? Must be both are kind of very close to each other. If you think in the space of the original space, the SQL dimension is orthogonal to the database dimension. One is one word, another word. So they're basically completely independent. So their similarity is zero. You don't expect them to be comparable at all. However, once you push them all into this lower dimensional space, you're actually able to see that D2 and D1 are very close. This is the idea, this is the advantage of finding latent, the lower space, lower dimensional space. This is basically reducing the dimensionality. Okay, so LSI reduces dimensionality quite well. And I said LSI is matrix based, it's matrix factorization based. I want to think in terms of probability distributions because then I can make sense of it from a statistical distribution point of view. Now in 99, LSI has been around forever and ever. In 99, basically, people have been trying, and in 99, Thomas Hoffman essentially showed that a simple model like this essentially is a probabilistic reconstruction of LSI. Okay, and before you go there, realize that even if I had a document term matrix, and these would have real numbers like numbers 15, 25, etc., I can convert them into distributions. I can normalize each row and each column. Then they'll become distributions, for example. Okay, so if you think in terms of probability matrices, then essentially what he's saying is, here is his model for how the documents and terms are generated. So you pick a document, and then you, based on the document, you pick different topics with different probabilities. Based on the topic you pick the words with different probabilities. This is the unrolled model. So the rolled model, the plate model would look like this. So the documents are used to pick topics, which are then used to pick words. And the topics are this middle space, factor space. Okay? Now it looks as if somehow the documents are, again, this is a place where you should be careful and realize that the directionality is not causation. It's a Bayes net. It's just a distribution. It's the way you generate things. Okay? If you don't like this, you would prefer Z causing both D and W in terms of the arrows. That's not hard to get. Okay? So if you have a network like this, then essentially you have your joint distribution factorizes this way. PD times PZ given D times PW given Z. Right? That's what this network is saying. But then I can combine these two and using Bayes network rewrite them. A Bayes rule, rewrite them. So PD given PZ given D is nothing but PD and Z, which can also be written as PD given Z times PC. This looks more symmetric. Somehow the factors are hovering above both the documents and words. Okay, actually these are equivalent. So PLSI model can be seen both as an asymmetric or asymmetric model. It's just the same factor. It's basically, the joint distribution can be factorized this way or this way. Yes?
Shouldn't there be a plate over W as well?
Plate over, no, because we are saying every word has its own topic. This is the picture. So the plate is on this. Okay? Okay. This is PLSI. Now you come here and you ask yourself, why is this any different from LDA? It's not easy. If you come directly to LDA, it's easy to be impressed. If you did not know anything else, it looks like a great idea. If you come this way, this is a 99 model. 2003 model doesn't look all that different. It is still different, but the differences are more subtle than you would expect. Which is the reason why in the JMLR paper they spend a large number of initial pages explaining why. Because before you become famous in science, you need to tell the rest of the jealous people as to why you have done something that they haven't thought about. Otherwise your paper won't get published. And you have to self-publish it and nobody will read it. Okay? You can start a company and become a billionaire, but still you won't have a paper. That's a different story. Okay, so the interesting question is, so why is this different from LSI? What's the step from LSI to LDA? That's the last thing we will talk about essentially. LSI to LDA, the step basically is, this is like when we started talking about document to word distribution directly without factors. I basically said, it's not a sort of a generative model. You can compress the existing documents, but you don't quite know how to generate the new documents. To some extent, that's actually because, so actually, in fact, I would say the following thing. The simpler idea is, I would actually argue, and several people argue, that PLSI was, when it was brought up in 99, people still didn't really believe that Bayesian learning can be done. They always assume you can only do maximum likelihood estimates. And since it's going to be incomplete data, they used EM. So if you were to read the PLSI paper by Thomas Hoffman, he provides a nice EM style algorithm and will show that it sort of is similar in effect to what LSI would be doing. Okay, but then I can actually do, now I know that I can do Bayesian learning. I mean, they knew then too, but people didn't try it. Okay, so if you were to put trials on all these guys, then the model starts looking very, very similar to LDA. So in fact, to a first order of approximation, most people, some people think that really LDA is sort of like PLSI, except you use Bayesian learning. Now you would say, well, you could have used Bayesian learning in PLSI too. Yes, you can. Okay, but when it was, sometimes things, co-occurring things get connected semantically when they don't have to be connected semantically. Sometimes in history of science, idea 1, idea 2, idea 3 will come together. And then people will think they're all somehow connected with cement. It's not really true. You can break that cement and use idea 1, and instead of idea 2, use idea 2 dash. And it won't be obvious unless, after a while of people poring over this. Okay, so at a first order of approximation, I would say LSI, PLSI, which is from LSI, it's a probabilistic version of latent semantic indexing. If you do Bayesian learning on it, you would get something very close to it. And then these are the other ideas that the JMLR paper talks about as to what are the differences. It's important for them to say it is different. Okay, and so these are some of the other things they say. For example, they say, they basically argue that it's not a true generative model. In the sense it's a very good compressive model, but it doesn't quite know how to generate a new document. And as I said, actually the symmetric version would generate the new document fine. But people first thought about it this way. And if you write it this way, it doesn't look like, it looks as if you have to first pick a document and then pick the topic and then pick the word. But the same thing can be written this way, in which case you pick the document, topic first and then document and the word. Okay, so the point then is PLSI is extremely close to LDA. The big difference is Bayesian learning. One big difference, certainly, is Bayesian learning. Okay? Now, finally, we get to LDA. Okay? So, what does LDA do? LDA, these are his examples, essentially. Of course, by the way, the point, of course, is the LDA does work better than PLSI. The JMLR paper not only has to argue that they are conceptually better than PLSI, but they also have to argue that empirically they are better in performance than PLSI. And so they have a whole bunch of experiments. You know, I mean, you may or may not agree with the experiments, but the whole bunch of experiments in all of which essentially LSI is the loser, one of the losers, and LDA wins. And what's more important, you know, this particular idea we're talking in a class because many other people used it many other times, and it's been quite useful. Okay, so it's important to lose the magic, but it's also important to realize that it's still a pretty nice idea. You know, it actually can be applied in many different directions. Okay, so what the LDA looks at in terms of documents is it basically thinks each word in the document somehow is coming from a different topic. So there is a yellow topic, there is a pink topic, and a blue topic, and different words are from different things. Okay, and if you look at it, presumably, you know, computer, numbers, and those look like computer sort of topic. By the way, this is important to know that if you were to find a topic, you won't know what the topic is. I mean, there is no name for it. You will later on give a name to it. You know, essentially that's what happens. I mean, like when people were, you know, doing what is grunge hip hop, you know, did they say, let's now invent a genre called grunge hip hop and start playing? No. They'll start playing stuff, and some wise guy says, that looks like grunge hip hop. Let's call it that. And it becomes that. Right? Names are given after the fact. Okay? So, however, what does topic have? What is a topic? Topic is a distribution over words. Given the topic, you know, which words are more likely, which are less likely. Now, what is a document? Document is a distribution over topics, according to LDA. Okay, so to get this, basically, this is the picture he is thinking. You generated the document by first picking a distribution over topics. You said, you know, really a lot of yellow topic, a little bit of pink topic, and certain amount of blue topic. Notice that if you pick all the topics, it will be like WebGR, you know, all colors are combined, you get white. You see what I'm saying? And if all colors are combined with more or less slightly different, you know, if think about this is actually a very good analogy. If you are trying to make colors using the palette of 7 colors, okay, I would argue that most of the colors you can distinguish. At least, you know, men can distinguish. Women apparently can distinguish lots and lots of different colors. But men tend to distinguish more or less red, blue, and green, right? And then so basically you want the colors you can distinguish should have close to 0 probabilities for the one of the dimensions. Then you get to differentiate. Okay? So this is a sparse distribution over topics. And then from there, given each topic, then you can pick, you know, so you first pick, given this distribution, then I need to first pick a topic. And then given that topic, pick a word. Then go back again, pick a topic, given the topic, pick a word. That's what is being done. And then those words actually were put into this document. What this picture does not tell you is that this basically just gives you a bag of words. It does not at all give you the directionality of the words. This is why, you know, this point about whiplash effect is nonsensical at some level. Because I never said document really is a sequence of words. I said document upfront becomes a bag of words. And if it's a bag of words, there is no whiplash. Because you don't change topic from word to word. It's not, you know, bag of words basically means somehow you look at the entire bag and understand it. That's it. There is no idea of reading it left to right. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So this picture basically tells you everything that we have come up to. You know, this is the topic mixture for this document. Each topic itself is just a probability over words. Probability distribution over words. And the best way you can summarize a topic, is to just show some of the high probability words given that topic. And then there's a ... Every word does have a probability. And hopefully a non-zero probability. Unless you think no computer science book will never have the word electrical in it. You would not have 0 to electrical. You would just have a maybe lower probability. In fact, electrical will have pretty high probability for computer mathematics. Okay, so those are the topics would be seen as these columns of words organized. One way of seeing them is as columns of words organized with the most probable word top. So you can just summarize each topic by the top 10 big words and the top 10 most likely words given that topic. Okay. Okay. So this is the LDA model. Okay. So you're picking the topic distribution, which in itself is being picked from a Dirichlet distribution. From the Dirichlet distribution, you sample Dirichlet distribution, you'll get a single distribution over k topics. Okay, so theta is picked from Dirichlet over alpha. And then having picked theta, then I stick to that document. That document only will have this theta as the topic plus this distribution. And so I can pick the topics for each word, from this distribution. I'm sampling it, truly sampling it. Now having picked the topic for the word, I still need to know if that was the topic, what is the probability that this word will be picked as against some other word. That is given by a different distribution, which is basically a prior over the Dirichlet prior of the size of the number of words. Notice we already talked about it earlier. So you have two Dirichlet priors, one is of k size, one is of v size. This is the generative model. If I were to give you this model, you can generate documents. Right? Now, this model will be as big as the number of documents and the number of words in it. So I write it like that. So if you see this, you should think this. If you did, you understood, at least at the 0th level, what the model is. Okay, and then we probably should stop, but here this is a little example which starts with only two categories. Category 1, which is this probability over these words. Category 2, which is this probability over these words. The zeros are not actually good. Dirichlet never gives anybody a 0. But imagine this is the thing. Then I can generate, so these are the two categories. And here is a document with 0, 1 probability. That means it only comes from the second topic, not from the first topic. Here is a document with 0.25, 0.75, 0.5, 0.5, 0.75, 0.25, 1, 0. Candies all over again. Right? Except now the candies are not just two candies because each topic can have many different words with different probabilities. So if you were to generate, here is a document which looks like this. A document is just a bag of words. So you can look at this and see whether these documents are different from each other. Better yet, I sent you a link to a direct application. NIPS conference, Neural Information Processing Conference, is being held in Reno, Nevada right now, starting today. And somebody essentially did an LDA on the text of all the NIPS papers. And I sent you a link to that. And it basically just said, let's assume there are 10 topics. I don't know what those topics are. And I'll just invert the generative model, fit the topics using the Bayesian learning. And then, for each paper, first of all, it'll show you how do they say what topics they found. For each topic, they show the top 10 words in the topic. That's what is in the top of that line, that page. And then for each paper, they will see what is its topic niche. And then you can browse the papers now. If you somehow like topic 1 and topic 5, you didn't know what their names were. This is like Pandora's way of suggesting you more music. Nobody knows what the heck is hip hop, grunge rock, or something. I'll show you a song. If you like it, then I'll show you more songs like that. So that's what LDA will allow you. It basically says you can browse the NIPS papers. Play with it. You'll both understand how LDA works in application and understand actually what is hot in NIPS, which is really a conference that's quite relevant to all the probabilistic models that we discussed. And then come back having read that paper, especially the collapse deep sampling, because next week we're just going to, on Wednesday we're just going to discuss the inference aspects.